Alright guys, today we continue answering your questions, and so this video suggestion is from Marlon and Snoopy27, says mixing in FL Studio. So if you guys look at this session on the West Coast beat we made, on each track there's 0 plugins on each track. Now there's one here that we turned off, but there's 0, there's an EQ on this one. Let's see what this EQ is doing. So I'm basically, this isn't even being used on the sound because we swapped out the sound. So there's 0 plugins on all these sounds here, and I'll even turn these off just to prove that you guys aren't hearing plugins. We're even going to turn off the plugins on the master. So here's what the beat sounds like before we start adding plugins. Usually as a beat maker, the first place you want to go to is your mix bus. Usually, okay, I'm generalizing, because this is where all the elements stack up. And rarely do you go to individual sounds. Let's right click and route to this track only. When you're going to individual sounds in your mixer, you're probably sound designing at that point. That's not really mixing, you're sound designing. When you're making a beat, you're basically mixing as you're going. You're not waiting till the very end to turn stuff up and down. So usually speaking, you're gonna pick all the sounds and everything's gonna be turned up or down already. So mixing is really just thinking about the group of things. So let's call this the mix bus. And all we're going to do here is just focus on 2 things to add more energy. Not every track needs energy. Okay, there's main things though. Energy, okay, meaning harmonics and also dynamics. Those are the 2 main things we need to focus on with the beat. So let's add the BusyWorks Beats EQ, for example. This is going to add the energy. So let's turn up the drive knob. It's going to add the knock to the kick. It's going to add the density to the track. It's going to fill in those gaps that sound hollow. So let's just A/B this real quick. Here's before. Sounds very hollow. Here's after. So simply just using, saturation like our algorithms here will fill out your track. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/EQ to grab this EQ for free for a limited time. Then we're going to turn on high quality mode in the case that you worry about aliasing, which it normally doesn't happen very much. And we can switch out the algorithms here for different styles of saturation here. Harmonic distortion is what I call it. So let's see which style matches this vibe. I think dense matches this vibe the best. So I think for this track, the dense knob definitely, the dense algorithm works the best for this track. And then we can pull back the drive mix level. So now we're gonna think in terms of dynamics. Usually in a song, you have a kick and a snare. Those create the dynamics along with the hi-hat. So if we want the kick and the snare to jump out more, they need to be turned up. The pointy stuff needs to be turned up basically, or the sustain stuff needs to be turned down. So sometimes you don't just turn everything up, you turn stuff down. So for example, if I wanted more dynamic in this track, I might go, okay, I want my sustained stuff to be turned down. So what is sustained? It means sounds I hold like a piano. We're gonna turn that down. And now the drums are gonna feel more back and forward because now we're turning down the things that make it feel flat. Okay, so basically you have flat sounds and you have pointy sounds. The pointy sounds need to poke out from the flat sounds more to feel more dynamic range. If the sustained sounds or the flat sounds are close to the level of the pointy sounds, it doesn't sound pointy because you have a smaller dynamic range. So that's why we're turning down the sustained sounds, and it makes your track feel more dynamic just from turning stuff down. Sometimes your bass can even be perceived as dynamic. I meant to say sustain. I said dynamic wax. So I'm turning down all the linear sounds so that the pointy stuff sticks out a little bit more. Now, if you want more loudness, you can pan things left or right. And when you pan them, they're going to be perceived as louder because now you don't have both ears summing them to mono. Let's pan some things. Let's pan like this aggressive lead to the left. Now normally I do darker sounds on the left, brighter sounds on the right. This is how I pan things. Now we don't have to pan anything. This is just to help the ear separate the sounds. Not mandatory, however. But this will also give it a perceived stereo width because now we have a difference between our left stuff and our right stuff. So without using any stereo plugins. Now the tricky part is, how do you balance the things on the left with the things on the right if there's no equal and opposite? So that's the tricky part about panning. There's no opposite to the string going dun 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 dun. Now, so there's no one way to pan anything. The main lesson here is that we're going to focus on the stereo bus when it comes to mixing most of the time for beat makers. All right, so let's use the BusyWorks Beats EQ2. You guys can grab this for a limited time for free. After this weekend, it is not going to be free. So go to busyworksbeats.com/EQ. So now we have the energy. If I turn this off, we lose that energy. Now I'm going to add a plugin here to work on the dynamic range. We have the tape emulation at busyworksbeats.com. So here is, we can use what's called the transient mode on post mode to boost some of the transient. And so what we're doing is making the song more pointy. However, we lose headroom by making it more pointy. But it's only for a small amount of time. I'll exaggerate it. So now the kick's really jumping. You can feel the track going wah, 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 like that because I'm really making it obvious. Let's pull this back to about half. Now let's mess with some tape. Tape is another way to add saturation to fill out a track. This is not mandatory. It's just for a certain texture. We can also add compression to also add to the dynamic. Now we could use VCA for more snappy compression. We don't have to do this. I'm just showing you guys. So now we can hear the volume go down. So basically it's making the pointy parts more pointy because it's turning down everything after that pointy part. So it's all about the pointiness and the flatness of our track. Now, instead of this compressor, we're going to use another compressor on our stereo width plugin here. And we're going to go to basically anything below 1:1 ratio. So this becomes expansion at this point. A different way of handling turning up the volume. So now we can give it a short attack. So I'm going to turn off the tape emulation. Bring it back in, unless in this case let's use only the transient module from the stereo width. So basically we're only using the tape emulation for the tape sound here. Then we're moving into the stereo width where we're using a compressor to expand the signal up. Just make sure we're not clipping here. Now another stage is clipping. This is where we get the aggression out of the track. This is where we push into the clipper to get more and more aggression without going past 0. So let's turn on the clipper. Mid mode's the most aggressive mode. Now this is already crunchy, but I'll show you guys how hard we can push the sound here. I wouldn't push the sound this hard, it's way too aggressive. Let's pull back the mix first. We also have oversampling in here, just in case you guys are worried about aliasing. Now, another thing people don't think about when it comes to mixing beats is sometimes stuff is overly stereo widened, if that's a word. Overly widened. So we're going to use what's called crosstalk to start to, in a creative way, pull stuff more narrow. So it almost feels more cohesive instead of all this stereo information everywhere. And when you pull sounds in more narrow, you can also perceive the dynamic easier because now you're only listening to one channel of movement instead of everything scattered across the stereo field. So I found that a lot of songs are better, more narrow. And if we want to widen things, we can go to the EQ, for example, go to the side image and just use different techniques like boosting on the 300 hertz or 200 hertz to add a little more warmth on the side for proximity. Not mandatory, I'm just showing you guys little things we could do. I'll exaggerate it so you guys can hear. See, it has that low end of the keys. So we can enhance that. And it adds a sense of width without everything being on the side. You can also add more harmonics. I don't think we need more harmonics, but let's go. Let's turn all these effects off. So notice we didn't go to individual sounds on each channel. Make sure we're not clipping here. Now, another plugin you can go into is a limiter. For this, it depends on if you're just putting out the beat. But since we're just doing this to show you guys steps, the limiter would be the last thing just to catch things going above 0. Pull it back down to 0. Now, the cool thing is you can push into limiters for different tones. Now we get a little more dynamic as well when we push into the limiter. There's different speeds as well. I recommend you guys mess with this. So to the right gives you more recovery time, to the left gives you faster time, but sometimes it doesn't always give you the best groove. It's very transparent. Personally, I like my limiters sometimes to just have a little bit of a groove to it. So here's before the limiter. Here's after. Now this limiter has a special harmonic drive, so let's see if we boost it 20 hertz, will it fill out the bottom end a little bit? Now we can feel that density jump out of this mix. Set this to mono, not that I would ever just put the limiter on mid signal only, but you guys can try this out. We can also switch out the way it clips, so let's switch different modes here. Now we're shaving off a little more energy going into the ceiling. We don't always need this. As you guys can hear, it's starting to get crunchy, well, overly crunchy. But it adds this little crunch that you can't get without it. So we're just watching the input level so it's not destroying the signal. We could also use upward compression here. This basically makes the sustain sounds more sustained, so we're losing some dynamic here. We also have a clip mix level in this plugin specifically, so that we can pull back on if it's too aggressive. Let's do it before and after. Here's before. Let's turn the whole chain off. I think we could add a little bit more high end in here as well. So let's right click, let's go to high shelf. Let's add that high end. We can also make this dynamic by right clicking, make dynamic, and then mess with the dynamic threshold here. Here's before. Here's after. Let's mess with that stereo width a little bit. Let's use more vintage crosstalk so it doesn't take up the whole signal. I still think it just was too wide for the sound. So again, the EQ is free. The tape plugin's free only for until tomorrow. Go to busyworksbeats.com/EQ or busyworksbeats.com/tape to grab either of these two, the EQ2 and the tape emulation. We will be adding these to our store, busyworksbeats.com. We were just testing things. Want to thank you guys. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace out, guys.